welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm pleased to connect with you. Now let's see, for context so that everybody understands how we met. Did we meet? So yeah, I know you were part of Startup Day. Did we meet through Courtney Jones in that group? Or not Courtney Jones, sorry, Courtney Piper in that group?
I'm not entirely sure, but I was a part of the works at KEC, so we must
That's
have been
probably
connected through
what it
there.
is. Yeah, absolutely. So the Knoxville Entrepreneur Center, and as you were commenting before we started recording, Jonathan Sexton and Jim Biggs in that group connected us together. I'm thrilled to share your story. I know we've tried to get it on the books for a little bit, and we finally got it down. So just maybe share with everyone a little bit about your background and sort of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually just recently moved here from
You
California. I
did.
was a product manager at a Silicon Valley company called Salesforce,
Oh, so
and that was the job that I took after graduating from Harvard Business School. Before Harvard Business School, I started my career at McKinsey, a management consulting
hmm
company, at a startup called ZocDoc, as well as in venture capital at Globespan Capital Partners. And I graduated from Princeton, kind of my hometown college in New Jersey. So
how what a diverse background. I'm sure a lot of people right now, their eyes just did this or their ears perked up when you mentioned, McKinsey and Harvard Business School and all those things. What an absolutely fantastic pedigree. So if before we get into your story about your business, I wonder, since we're on here talking about Southern startups, maybe we could talk just a little bit about your perception of the Knoxville startup scene, the East Tennessee startup scene, not necessarily a comparison about what you're used to, but maybe just kind of what you're enjoying about our area and what we're doing with startups. A lot of people don't know that this area has got a bit
yeah,
of a hub, not quite like
yeah.
some other areas, but a bit of a hub. What are you experiencing getting since you've moved
So
here?
I actually moved to Knoxville with my husband. My husband was the first one to set his roots here, and it was actually because he's a part of Innovation Crossroads at
Uh,
Oak Ridge National Lab. Um, so they have this really great program where, with like government resources plus resources at the lab to help incubate these very hard scientific startups. So it was literally just an opportunity he couldn't pass up. And when I finally left my full-time job to focus on my startup full-time, it just didn't make sense to continue doing long distance, California to Knoxville. So I decided to move here. And honestly, I was unbelievably pleasantly surprised. You think that Silicon Valley is the center of startups, but
right.
honestly, both my husband and I, we found that there are potentially even more resources here for startups at this super early stage.
Isn't
So
isn't that interesting? So that's
yeah,
why I started the SouthFound podcast. Being from Knoxville, I always tell people we have a national laboratory here, and that's what you're alluding to. So just for
exactly.
more context, I've had Beth Connerty from the Innovation Crossroads on the podcast. She was a couple podcast episodes ago, and then people like Anna Douglas from Sky Nano. And so, yeah, it shocks people to come here and say there's this huge national lab that's commercializing all kinds of startup ideas. There's a Fairview Technology Center that I manage, which is an incubator here in town. You've got the KEC that you mentioned, the university. It really shocks people to come to little old Knoxville, Tennessee, and find out we've got a bit of a startup activity going on.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what KC has is also really special. They provide completely free, non-dilutive help, and they're like an in-house design agency to help you with whatever is most important for your company, given where you are. So we found that to be tremendously helpful.
Now, I want to talk about your businesses, but I'm just curious, since we've had some other of the Innovation Crossroads folks on here, what's your husband's business?
So he's working on an advanced nuclear reactor concept.
Okay.
Um, it goes over my head, but you'll have to ask him in person.
I'm not the science type either. My wife is in genetics. I'm a finance guy, so former C-level banker. I forget the science piece. Remind me, and we'll try and get him on the show in season 3 as well. So that would be great to do. So you move here. You find out, holy cow, there's an entrepreneurial sort of movement going on, or maybe you knew it coming into it. If we could go backwards a little bit, I'm curious. Have you always had this entrepreneurial side to you? I know you, again, the great credentials with Harvard and all these things, but did you know you were going the entrepreneurial route early on in your professional career?
So when I was really young, like after McKinsey, I obviously was really attracted to the idea of startups, which is why I joined a startup. I joined ZocDoc. And then I loved sitting on the other side in venture capital as well. I loved thinking about, what could be possible. And at one point in time, I did really, like, it was alluring to do, the idea of starting my own company. But I guess as I matured, I realized that I didn't want to start a company just to start a company. I didn't want to like come up with 200 ideas on a whiteboard and like go through them and see which one was the best. So honestly, at Harvard Business School, I didn't even focus on entrepreneurial classes, if you will. I was perfectly happy contributing to other projects that were already in place if it was something that really resonated with me. But I think it was going through the wedding planning process myself with my husband was just so painful and so annoying that it almost became an obsession. So I still remember a conversation with my husband where I took a step back. I was like, do you think I should really do this?
Right.
And he was like, well, Flora, like, I don't know a single thing that makes you more angry than having planned your wedding. So so it just goes to show that it almost became an obsession that I really wanted to fix. And I knew that I had the skill set and ability to make it better for others. And that's kind of what propelled me onto this journey.
So a lot of entrepreneurs do get that start because they've got a pain point of their own and they're figuring out how to solve it. Sounds like you were exactly the same way.
Exactly.
So how long ago was the wedding?
So we got married in 2016.
Okay, so not too far in the past, and so it's still that pain point is still sort of fresh.
Exactly.
And was it so the business is Unveil Events, and we'll get to sort of more of how it works and what it does in a second. But so just kind of on that origin story, as you were building toward this, you're going through the process of planning your own wedding, and I'll just say I can sympathize. I can't feel your pain. Being a man, somehow we get lucky for the most part, and most of it does not fall on us. And so, I know I've, seen ladies go through plenty of their own pain points going through this, so I can completely sympathize with where your business model is coming from. So I think it's just brilliant. But so you're going through the wedding planning yourself, and walk us through sort of when this moment, or I'm sure it usually does build, but was there a moment where you said, okay, that's it, I'm going to turn this into a business? Was it after the conversation with your husband, or what was the impetus to finally say, I'm going to turn this into something?
Yeah, so I think it was literally just over time. Like in the very beginning of the process, I was just shocked that, no information about vendors could be found. During the middle of the process, I, asked friends, I read blogs, and I was shocked again that there were no good tools and everyone was literally using Excel files or Google Docs to manage like a very big project management. It's a big event that you're trying to, pull together. And then I compared that experience to not only my own personal experience in like all other areas of my life. So like buying a car, for example, you can, get a sense of values or, of finding, renting an apartment for a weekend. You can find availability in your price range for other areas. But then I also looked at my work life where there are just so many project management tools, ways to make teams more efficient, ways to make communication better. All of these great tools existed in my professional life as well. And I just saw like, oh my goodness, I can't believe there's this big gap in, for a year. Like generally people plan a wedding for like 6 months to a year, a long period of time of just, a lot of tedious, like it just didn't need to be as bad as it was. And I think like the tipping point was, my husband and we were looking into transportation options for our wedding. And I'm trying to plan an event in Philadelphia. I'm living in California, which means I need to call all of these vendors before 2 p.m. my time. Otherwise, they're unreachable. So I had it on my to-do list, but I was working a pretty busy job. So I couldn't get around to calling them. And by the time I finally had time to call them, they were all booked. So I think that frustration was like, oh my goodness, I could make this better. And I think that was really like the nail in the coffin.
Sure. So that's a great place to sort of springboard into. So the idea Unveiled Events, and when did you officially launch as a business?
So I've been doing after the wedding, after our wedding in 2016, I started doing some research, talking to a lot of friends, helping friends plan their weddings just to understand the user experience a little better. Yeah, I would have never imagined I've now planned so many weddings. I would have thought one was enough, but I really wanted to understand the user and the pain point and like, how to
Okay.
create a product that really met not just my own personal needs, but like everyone else's needs as well.
Right. So it was about not drinking the Kool-Aid and doing some validation outside of your own
Exactly.
experience. Is that
Exactly.
right? Okay.
Exactly. So we did that for a period of time and then really focused on building out the online web app this year. And we just publicly launched earlier this summer.
Why don't you walk the listeners through kind of how it works? I think we get starting to get the sense of what it does, but we could definitely go more. So how does Unveil Events work and people access the information?
Yeah, absolutely. So all you have to do, you go to unveilevents.com and you can create an account, and it's basically a free online wedding planning organizer. So today, most people are using Google Docs or Excel. Here is a tool, a project management tool that's designed specifically for weddings. So once you create your account, it's basically like the most intelligent and an efficient binder online, if you will. So what that means is not only can you keep track of all of your information, important information like availability, pricing, files, contracts, but it also gives you tips, like insider tips that we've learned from planning hundreds, like so many weddings, talking to hundreds of vendors and wedding planners to really distill their expert insider tips. So now even if you're just planning your wedding for the very first time, you know exactly what to look for when you're talking to a photographer. You know exactly the questions to ask when you're talking to your caterer and different things to consider. So this is information that normal people, myself included, when I was going through the process, I had no idea about. So you literally just call up your girlfriends or like you Google online.
Who'd you
Um,
use kind of
yeah,
thing?
honestly, there are lots of things that I probably should have done better for my own wedding, but everything worked out great. But we just arm people with these tools that they otherwise, or this knowledge that they otherwise wouldn't know. And that's totally free. That's in the free online app. Another aspect of the tool is our concierge service.
Okay.
So as I mentioned to you before, my pain of not being able to call all these transportation companies, because I'm based in California, I'm busy, I didn't have time. But like, in order to solve for that, and to solve for just not being able to find this information online today, if you are looking into like 5 photographers here in the Knoxville area, you can tell us, hey, Unveil, please research these 5 photographers for us, for me, and then we'll literally collect the information, ask the right questions, and get that information for you, and then you can decide whether or not you want to move forward. That way you're not bogged down doing just a lot of these like information collecting.
So really just it's sort of outsourcing some of the functions from the concierge perspective to be able to do that. So you have the ability to work through the app, kind of plan it on your own with the guidance
Exactly.
from your company. And then if that's not your thing and you just kind of want to outsource it, you guys will jump in the middle of it and do it. And are you outsourcing those functions to other people on the team or other planners? How's that working?
Yeah, so right now everything is done in-house because we want to maintain very high
Sure.
quality. So in the future, absolutely, we'll probably look into different ways of outsourcing, but quality is of utmost importance to us today. So rest assured, people who use our concierge will have a very competent planner by their side
Yeah.
for like a fraction of the cost of a traditional wedding planner.
Yeah, perfect. And I'm curious. I'm remembering you saying your product management background. Has that been beneficial in the build out of the solution? Sort of how you work through the growth of the product itself.
Yeah, absolutely. So my co-founder and I think we really lucked out, and I found a great partner. He actually also just got married earlier this summer, so he really understands the pain point as well from a user perspective. But he works on the technical side, so he's built the app. And with my product management background, I'm the closest person to the user. I talk to users daily, trying to understand what works for them, what's confusing to them, what could be improved. And then I from that information, I decide, okay, what does the app look like? Like, what is the next feature to build? Or before we had any features, like, what does it look like period. Like, let's build this thing from complete scratch. Right now, it's more, okay, what is the next feature? What to prioritize? What to fix? And then in addition to that, I'll basically put together wireframes that I then hand off to my co-founder. My co-founder is actually super multi-talented and wears multiple hats as well. He's both a designer and a full stack engineer.
Okay.
So then he'll take my wireframes and then, make them look more beautiful because he's very good at that. And so he'll do anything from the UI all the way to, building and deploying on production. And then the QA comes back to me. I do the QA for the app.
Of course. So without giving away the secret sauce, what are some of the sort of version 2, version 3 things that you're thinking or working on through right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the end of the day, we just want to make a tool that's actually useful for users. So there's a very, very long list of a backlog list. For example, one thing is, I'm looking for a photographer. How much should that cost? Right now, believe it or not, a very good budgeting tool doesn't exist today. So that's one thing on our roadmap. So just all of these different tools to literally make users more efficient and more knowledgeable going into the process, that's where we're focusing our efforts.
Okay. And just a little bit about the revenue side. Again, not going to get too personal on things, but how is the concierge side set up? Is that a project fee? Is it a one-time project fee? Is it a subscription model? What's sort of the...
So right now it's a one-time fee of $195. And that's for unlimited usage of our concierge. So we've priced it at a point where we won't lose money. We're not making so much money off of it. Right now, we're really focused on, developing a product that users love, as well as obviously covering our costs.
Okay, so right now it makes sense, not necessarily as focused on revenue, just sort of continuing to validate the model and build it out further and further and get those user numbers up along the way. Okay. And just self-funded to this point or looking to raise capital? Where are you guys in sort of that evolution?
Yeah, right now we're completely self-funded, and we're lucky that my co-founder and I, we complement each other really well and have the skill sets to build this product and bring it to market. So that's where we are right now. In the future, we'll probably look to raise some money, but that's not something we're focused on today.
Sure. Is that just still trying to build out the model a bit, push those milestones, that sort of approach to kind of get further down the road before you go, or you just don't necessarily need it right now to hit the phase you're in?
I think we're just considering timing. Like, at what point in time is my time more valuable pitching or my time more valuable talking to customers? And then when that shift happens is when I'm going to refocus my efforts.
Yeah, that's a great, thank you for that comment. So I always, if you've listened to the podcast in the past, I always stop when there's a there's been plenty of good nuggets so far, but when there's a really good piece of information, I'll always stop and tell the listener, go back and listen to what she just said, because you're so you obviously understand what you're doing, which is wonderful. Saying there you're going to continue. It sounds to me like you're doing a lot of validation at this point, lots of conversations with users, and just your comment about your time is more valuable there than going out and raising money, because what most people don't understand, and Carl Hughes said it to me this morning in his interview, it's a full-time job just to go out and raise money.
Yeah.
And your time is better spent going out and doing this to get an even better product, push it further down the road, and let it grow from there. So thank you for sharing that nugget with everybody. If we could shift for a little bit and talk maybe just about your personal entrepreneurial journey. I'm curious, is this your very first startup? I know you were involved in one, but is this your very first as a founding member?
Yes, this is my first startup as a founding member. My co-founder, this is, I think, his third, but for me personally, it's my first.
And so what's been the best part about being a startup founder at this stage so far? What's been the most enjoyable?
I think, honestly, seeing something that didn't previously exist come to life, but not only come to life, being used by complete strangers who literally send me emails being like, oh my goodness, I'm so happy that I found this. I think that has been, honestly, the most exciting and fulfilling part.
I bet with this topic, it's always true, I think, when your idea and other people value it. But I think with this topic, because let's be honest, I mean, a wedding is probably one of the, we might call it top 3 events in a person's life.
Yeah.
I mean, this is such an emotional topic for people, and so and frankly, if you haven't been through it before, it can be painful.
Yeah.
So for you to be able to solve that pain point and make it easier and let them, I might argue, allow them to go on and sort of enjoy the whole process a bit more. It strikes me as that would be extremely rewarding and keep you going on a daily basis. So that's very interesting. What's been the very toughest part of being an entrepreneur? Again, I know you were involved in startup before, but as a founder, what's really the hardest part so far?
Yeah, well, I guess as a founder, you're literally learning how to do every single thing that is
Right.
so mission critical to the company for the first time, right? Like almost every single thing. So, granted, I do come with a product management experience, so
Right.
maybe defining the features was something that I had experience with, but that is just one aspect of what I need to do to be a successful founder, right? I need to, for example, how do you interact with media? How do you um, figure out SEO? Like all these things that I'd never done in my past, you now need to become an expert in and quickly and execute very quickly.
Right.
Like you need to have done it yesterday. So I think that has been a struggle. Just constantly learning things that you never knew. And then I think another thing is honestly, it's very hard. It's lonely too. I guess
Yeah.
I'm lucky that I have my husband, but it's definitely not an easy path.
And
So
you're saying lucky because he's kind of going through the same thing. You're both in the startup world,
yeah,
and you're both going through this. And can you maybe just go a little further with that? It's lonely because I imagine just because it's hard for the typical person to understand what you're going through, or you work from
yeah.
a home office.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm working in a home office. It's really hard to most people, they have really cush jobs and, after the hours of 9 to 5, they can, enjoy life. And my husband and I were like always constantly thinking about, oh my, like there's always something on our minds
Right.
that's related and there's always another worry to think about. So it's also hard to step away.
Yes.
There's just so many aspects of life that's really hard. But I think having somebody who's as understanding and supportive as my husband, who is actually going through very similar things, has been tremendously helpful.
Are there any other things you do to sort of mitigate those challenges? Is there any, do you ever do any, go to a co-working space or maybe go down to the KEC just to be around other entrepreneurs or,
Yeah,
things like that? Are there other things like, or mentors, are there other things like that you use to sort of hedge those challenges?
absolutely. Yeah. So KEC has obviously been super helpful in that respect, and the mentors around that, just to leverage their expertise. But honestly, just trying to be a little bit more balanced with life as well. So, for example, taking a camping trip a weekend because there is no internet. Even if I tried, there's no
Right, you couldn't get on if you had to.
internet. So my husband and I were able to spend time together and really unplug for, even though it was just one night, but that alone, that was helpful. But I think it's a long journey, so we're just trying not to burn out too quickly because it is a long path.
Sure. And do you feel like some of the benefits, you kind of alluded to them there, was sort of I don't want to put words in your mouth, but most folks we talk to talk about the flexibility and other benefits that come with being part of a startup, sort of offsetting to some degree this being on the clock, regularly kind of thing. Is that appealing to you? And if so, did you anticipate it being, or how does that worked out for you?
So honestly, in terms of flexibility, my husband and I, we work around the clock. So in terms of flexibility, yeah, in terms of we're our own boss, but we're also our harshest bosses. So I think that I'm not totally sure. I think on the flip side, what is really fulfilling is we're doing something that is like intrinsically meaningful to us, right?
Impact.
Yeah, we're not doing it because of our paycheck. We're not doing it for like whatever benefits or vacation or whatever that is. We're literally doing it because we want to see, like he wants to see his idea in the world. I want to, see my idea in the world. So that honestly has just been tremendously meaningful to us, and that's what keeps us going. And that's really, why we're still doing it.
And you're able to sort of stick to that why in those tough times when it's a bit too much, and then
Exactly.
escape into the Smoky Mountains for some downtime when you Need to get away.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, what's next up for Veiled Events? What's sort of next, sort of coming up soon for you?
Yeah, so with Unveil Events, we engagement season is coming up, so we're really excited about that. And we're just hoping to, get the word out in any way that we can ahead of that, so we can be helpful for couples.
Yeah, that sparks a quick question, if I may. Sort of, what are you doing from the marketing perspective since that is coming up? Are you working with Are you targeting any partnerships to sort of help get the word out? What's sort of your activity look like on the marketing side?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been very focused on content marketing.
Okay.
That'll be one of our main strategies for growth. But in addition to that, we are talking to some potential partners
Good.
that are in the works. So you'll have to stay tuned for that.
Okay. Well, as that evolves, please keep us informed, and we'll
Absolutely,
sort of update things along the way.
definitely.
Well, thanks so much for being on the show and sharing your story. It's been a pleasure to
Yeah.
hear it. There's been a lot of surprises along the way. If someone wants to learn more and or connect with you, if that's something you're open to, where can they find you
Yeah,
and the company?
absolutely. Just go to unveilevents.com or email me directly at flora@unveilevents.com.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day.
Bye.